Welcome back. Amid all the turmoil of the last few weeks, President Trump's economic team looks like they're making big strides on tax reform. Now this, it appears common ground on individual and corporate tax cuts has been reached at the so-called Big Six group. It's a group that includes Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. The options include this: capping the mortgage interest deduction for certain homeowners, eliminating state and local tax deductions, getting rid of businesses' ability to deduct interest costs, and getting full expensing for small businesses. Lets them immediately deduct investments like new equipment or facilities. You know, the Big Six, they're in agreement. Here's the thing. Will Congress sign on? Joining me now, former Reagan economic advisor. He's Art Laffer. Good to see you, Art.
Good to see you, Elizabeth. How are you?
Okay, so they get a deal at this little Big Six level. I mean, that's a step forward. But you remember what Ronald Reagan said. I often wonder what the Ten Commandments would look like if Moses ran them through Congress. Same for tax cuts, right?
Yes, that would be tax cuts would be probably commandment number 5.
Right. So what do you think? Do you think Congress is going to sign into any of this? The state and local deduction thing, I don't know. Getting rid of that, New Yorkers are going to be mad.
Well, you know, they shouldn't be deducted anyway. I mean, it just shouldn't be. And getting rid of the other ones are okay. I mean, they're all fine to get rid of. I would love to see a limitation on contributions to 501c3s and maybe $1 billion or something, so people like Warren Buffett don't get those deductions, so you get some revenues there. But honestly, I think what we really need to do is allow it to be down to 15% on the corporate tax. If you do that, you'll create enough growth that it'll pay for itself 3 times over, believe me.
You know, you bring up nonprofits. That's a $3 trillion sector. People don't realize how big the nonprofit sector is. I don't know if you could do anything there, but it's huge. Gigantic. You know, let's get back to Reagan and Trump, how they stack up vis-a-vis tax reform. You know this. You listened to John F. Kennedy give a speech, I think, about taxes when you were at Yale, right?
I did. How do you know that?
You're dating. I'm dating you. Figuratively. 1986.
You're great. Oh, my goodness.
Okay,
Here we go.
Here we go. All right, 1986, it is a lot different from 2017. I mean, back then you had Don Reagan, Reagan's White House Chief of Staff, Jim Baker, Tip O'Neill, Dan Rostenkowski, working with Bob Dole. It's a different crowd today, way more bipartisanship back then versus today, right?
Well, 86, yes. Do remember 86, we'd already just cleaned house in the 84 election. We won 49 states. All the Democrats were trying to be Republicans. Now, if you go back to 81, you had the president's popularity rising enormously after Hinckley shot him, but then tumbled dramatically into 82. And in 82, we lost seats in the House and the Senate. He dropped, I think, to a 35% favorable. It was a very partisan world back then. What we need to do is have one clear picture, one goal, one mission, one worldwide vision. And with that, I think we can get the Democrats on board. I mean, if we did a carbon tax, let's just imagine, Elizabeth, we did a carbon tax that paid for, let's say, from 20 to 15 on the corporate tax rate reduction. I'd go for that all the day, every week.
You think Al Gore would go for it? I mean, he's got a big carbon footprint.
I think Al Gore, I do believe Al Gore would go for it. I do believe Sheldon Whitehouse. No, but I do think he would. And I think Sheldon Whitehouse would come on board. And I also think a lot of Democrats in the House would come on board, maybe 35 or 40 of them. All they want is a token towards global warming. Now, I don't know whether there's global warming or not. That's not my field. But I do know that a carbon tax does a lot less damage than does an income tax or the corporate tax.
Yeah, some people think it hit the poor at the gas pump. But, you know, let's back up.
Lack of jobs hits the poor.
That's a good point.
The thing that killed the poor. And that's what we need with a corporate tax cut.
We had a professor. He's a New York City, a local professor. His name is Richard Wolff. You know him. He calls himself the country's favorite Marxist, or at least what people have called him. He said that we need to get back to the Eisenhower-level high tax rates, but he didn't get it. I think there are recessions. Weren't there recessions every other year during the Eisenhower years, during the 50s, rather?
Yes, it was. But everyone knows that the highest marginal income tax rate is a killer for economic growth, and it's also a huge killer for tax revenues. Every time we've dropped the highest marginal income tax rate for any period of time, revenues from the top 1% of income earners go up. As a share of GDP, we get economic growth, and their tax revenues go up even faster. It's been true since 1914. Now, 1913, it is true. When we raised tax rates on the rich from 0 to 7%, revenue revenues on the rich went up. But other than that, they've never done that.
Yeah, and Art, you know, a final point. According to the CBO, 60% of U.S. households, you know this, get more in the way, they take in more in the way of government benefits than they pay into the system in taxes, right?
They do, and the CBO, I wish they'd get to be a supply-side group, but they aren't. They don't even really consider supply.
Yeah.
They don't take into account tax shelters, choice of corporate form, movement of companies internationally. They don't take into account secondary, tertiary, and quaternary revenues, state and local revenues. If you included all of those, a corporate tax rate reduction from 35% to 15% would pay for itself 3 times over. And these guys say it's a deficit.
Did you
I mean, how bad?
Yeah. Did you say quaternary? Now, why wouldn't any girl want to date you? You said quaternary? What a word. Art Laffer, you're something. Will you come back?
It's right in the dictionary.
We'll look it up. Good to see you.